Okay, you probably know the story of Jericho, right? The Israelites march around the city, they blast their trumpets, and poof, the walls just come tumbling down. It's one of the most iconic stories of conquest out there. But what if it's not really about a military battle at all? What if the whole thing is actually about a war happening deep inside the human mind?
What if this ancient story isn't a history of what happened out there, but a super detailed map of something that happens in here? That's what we're diving into today. We're going to decode the fall of Jericho, not as history, but as a psychoanalytic drama about the total collapse and rebuilding of the self. So for this explainer, we're going to hit pause on all the archaeological debates, all the historical arguments. Instead, we're going to read this as a kind of mythopoetic drama. Think of it as a story about the violent but totally necessary death of the ego and the birth of a brand new, more authentic identity.
Now, to get this drama, we have to start with the main stage, right? And that's the city of Jericho itself. Because in this reading, Jericho isn't really a city, it's a mind. And more specifically, it's a mind that has built some seriously big walls around itself.
To really get what these walls are, we gotta turn to the psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan. He had this idea that our ego, what he called the moi, isn't our true self at all. No, it's more like a fictional character we invent. It's a rigid suit of armor that we build to keep all the messy, chaotic, unconscious stuff locked away and out of sight. So, the walls of Jericho, they're the perfect, literal symbol of this psychological armor. They create this false feeling of a safe, complete inside by aggressively keeping everything else outside. The crazy part is, the fortress isn't really for keeping enemies out. It's for keeping the self locked in. And you can actually see this ego in action in the story. Remember when the spies sneak into the city? What does the king of Jericho do? He doesn't ask questions. He doesn't try to understand them. He just has this knee-jerk reaction to get them out. And that right there is the ego's #1 job, a passionate, panic defense of its own ignorance, seeing any new information as a mortal threat. So, if the walls aren't really stone, if they're a psychological defense, how do you take them down? Well, not with an army. The story gives us this incredibly weird weapon, a sound that isn't designed to attack stone, but to attack the mind itself. You see, the blast from the shofar, the ram's horn, it isn't music. It's not a word with meaning. The psychoanalyst Julia Kristeva would call this the semiotic chora. It's that raw, rhythmic, gut-level sound that exists before we even learn language. We're talking about a baby's cry, a groan of pain. It's pure physical sound that just completely bypasses your logical brain. And this raw pre-language noise, it's a blast of what Lacan called the real. It's this traumatic, overwhelming force from our own unconscious that the ego fortress was built to keep out in the first place. The walls were designed to repress this internal chaos, but now, that chaos is being weaponized from the outside to bring the whole structure down. But here, right here, is where the story gets really good. Because the biggest threat to Jericho wasn't the noise outside the city. The real secret, the key that unlocks this whole thing, is someone who is already living inside the fortress. Her name is Rahev. Okay, pay attention, because this is the clue that cracks the whole case wide open. The harlot in Jericho is named Rakav, but in Hebrew, that name is almost identical to another name, Rahab, and Rahab is a mythological, primordial sea monster of chaos. Trust me, that is not a coincidence. The link here is just mind-blowing. That monster, Rahab, was actually the poetic name for Egypt, the chaos that was supposedly defeated when the Israelites crossed the Red Sea. Their first great enemy was this chaos monster, and now the very first person they meet in their new home just happens to have its name. And this reveals such a deep psychoanalytic truth. You can't just destroy trauma or chaos. You can only repress it. You can only push it down. The external enemy, Rahab, was never really gone. It was just internalized, and now it's living inside the walls of the ego. Julia Kristeva has a perfect name for this, the abject. The abject is everything we have to push away to create a sense of a clean, proper self. It's the dirt, the mess, the socially unclean things. And Rahab, as a harlot, is the perfect social abject. She is the very thing the clean, orderly fortress of Jericho was built to exclude. And this is the knockout punch of the whole story. The ego built these massive walls to keep the monster out, but the monster was already inside the whole time. The repressed chaos isn't storming the gates. It's literally living in a house built into the wall itself, just waiting to help bring the entire structure down from within.
So, when the walls finally do come crashing down, when the ego just shatters into a million pieces, what happens next? Well, the story doesn't end there in total destruction. It actually gives us a roadmap for how to survive and how to build a totally new kind of self.
And that is the question, isn't it? When your defenses crumble and everything you've pushed down for years comes flooding back, how do you keep from being completely destroyed? How do you survive your own breakdown?
The story's answer is just so elegant. Survival doesn't come from frantically trying to rebuild that old rigid wall. No, it comes from grabbing onto something totally new. Rachel is told to hang a scarlet cord from her window. And the thing is not just a rope, it's an incredibly powerful new symbol. I mean, this cord is just dripping with symbolic meaning. It's a sign of a new promise, a new deal. Its color, scarlet, links it directly back to the blood of the Passover lamb, the original sign that separated the Israelites from the chaos in Egypt. It's a symbol of joining a new community, of entering a new social order, a new law. So by letting go of the wall and grabbing onto this cord, Rashav is completely transformed. The abject, the chaos monster, the harlot, she isn't thrown out, she's integrated. She goes from being the ultimate outsider to a celebrated ancestor of kings. This is a story about successfully working through your trauma, not just trying to bury it again. There's this beautiful old Jewish legend that sums this all up perfectly. It's about a mythical river, the Sambatyon, that rages with sand and stones 6 days a week. It's impassable, total chaos. That's the real. But on the 7th day, the Shabbat, the day of the law, the river rests. You see, a healthy mind doesn't try to build a dam to stop the chaos forever. It uses a symbolic structure, a law, to give that chaos rhythm and a time to rest. So, what if the fall of Jericho isn't really about a Bronze Age city? What if it's a timeless blueprint for the fortress of our own ego, the traumatic experiences that can shatter it, and the symbolic lifeline that can allow us to integrate our own inner chaos and be reborn? Maybe these old stories aren't just histories of the past, but maps for a war that every single one of us still has to fight.